Hi, my name's Shane Bennett. I'm the former Executive Director of Net Ministries and began the journey with Net back in 1987. One of the things that we've always found important was the idea of building international teams, the value of having young men and women come from other countries. And so right from the very beginning, we had a team of made up of people from the United States and Canada and Australia. And I remember working really hard to build an all-Australian team. And one of the first feedbacks we got from young people were, "Where are the Americans?" And I really heard that as a voice from God, in the sense that young people were interested in the experience of others their own age, living in different countries, having different experiences of life. And so we've been really intentional, and we've had young people from so many different countries. And I think the latest new one that we've experienced was a young woman from Hungary who came and joined us for a year and is now doing great work in her home diocese in Hungary. But there's ongoing relationships we have with Uganda and other parts of Africa, and this is an exciting dimension to the ministry. So there's always something happening. It's always an evolution. It's always new, and part of that newness is the development of university ministry teams, which we've called FX mission teams, short for Francis Xavier. Of course, Francis Xavier was a great missionary who had to learn different languages, who had to adapt to cultural changes. And we see this for our teams, that one of the things Pope John Paul said to the peoples of Oceania, and in fact to the bishops, he said, "You have to learn the language of young people in order to communicate well with them." And so we find this ourselves, that there are many subcultures in Australia, and at the university there are people from many different countries. And so it's important that we learn to speak and to relate in ways that can meet people, can receive people, that we can create a place of welcome. And that's very important in a university context, because oftentimes young men and women are away from their homes or beginning to pull away from their families in some way. Some are students from overseas. And so creating a space of welcome where faith can be supported, where there can be new initiatives to reach out to those who are alienated from their faith. We face the reality in Australia that the majority of young people are not practicing faith. And so on a university campus where we might be dealing with 60,000 students, only a very small percentage of those are practicing their faith. And so part of our role is to go out, to engage them, to actually express interest in them. And that's been a great challenge and something that's working. It's not as if we live in the times where people come running to the church. We live in the time of not only leaving the 99, but perhaps leaving the one to go in search of the 99. And so that's a real challenge for us, and one that we're really trying to respond to very positively at the moment.
Before I was born, you knew me in the womb. You for you. I submit my life to you. Jesus, all my hopes, my dreams and my desires, you have called to set me free. I have dignity. You've recreated me. You've recreated me. You've recreated me. You've recreated me. I'm the apple of your eye. The Father's word breathe me into life. You call me by name to be set apart, to be salt and light. You called my name, and there is nothing greater than living for the Savior. There is nothing greater than living for you, Lord. And there is nothing greater than living for the Savior, than living for you. I submit my life to you. Jesus, all my hopes, my dreams and my desires, you have called to set me free. I have dignity. I submit my life to you. Jesus, all my hopes, my dreams and my desires, you have called to set me free. I have dignity. You've recreated me. You've recreated me. You've recreated me. You've recreated me. All the times that I've fallen, you lift me up. All the choices I made that have broken your heart. Did not know what I was going to be as I gave away all of that you sat for me. Down and embrace me and call me by name. I'm forgiven and called to you. God in the world, I gave all my life, Lord, all nothing back. I will love you, serve. You've recreated me. You've recreated me. You've recreated me. You've recreated me. Than living for the Savior, there is nothing greater. Living for you, Lord, there is nothing greater than living for the Savior. There is nothing greater than living for you, Lord. And there is nothing greater than living for the Savior. There is nothing greater than living for you, Lord. There is nothing greater than living for the Savior, than living for you. I submit my life to you. Jesus, all my hopes, my dreams and my desires, you have called and set me free. I have dignity. You've recreated me. 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 You've recreated me.
culture did please. vine, come on. You are the vine. Your arms they reach. The wild is yours. Proclaiming peace. Every person in this place. We are called and sent and chosen to bring light into the darkness in our world, to make a mark on discovery and raise the banner of our God. You are the way, the truth, and life. Our weapon is your holiness, and we defend our dignity because, come on, we are young and we are made. And it's your joy. At your word, terror on our streets, fear and tragedy, the cross our sign of victory. Jesus, you are the vine, you are the vine. Your arms they reach, the wild is yours, proclaiming peace. You are the vine. You are the vine. Thank you, Lord. Your arms they reach. The wild is yours, proclaiming peace. We are called and sent, chosen to bring light into the darkness in our world, to make a mark on history and raise the banner of our God. The way, the truth, and life. Our weapon is your holiness, and we defend our dignity. Come on, 'cause we know we are young and we are brave. And it's your joy. Darkness in our world, to make a mark on history and raise the banner of our God. You are the way, the truth, and life. Our weapon is your holiness, and we defend our dignity. Come on, sing it! We are young and we are brave, and it's your joy.
from New Zealand. And I can't resist, so I'm going to do my New Zealand accent again. He's from New Zealand and he's married with 5 kids. He has been working full-time for 14 years for pro-life and family and marriage. And he's been traveling all around Australia and New Zealand, going into schools, telling them all about this stuff. Without further ado, I want to introduce you guys, and make sure you give him a really warm welcome from Ignite, is Brendan!
As you've heard, my name is Brendan and I'm from New Zealand. And that's right. Yeah, 2 of us. That's the place from across the ditch where all the awesome sporting trophies are kept at the moment. So that's where I'm from. Go the Warriors? No, I don't think so. They're an embarrassment to us. One of the things I love about being a dad is because people often say to me, Brendan, it must be so awesome to be a dad, seeing kids, your kids actually being born and watching them take their first steps and hearing them say their first words and going to the school productions and all that kind of, stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But the best thing about being a dad is that you can do really embarrassing things in public and everyone just expects it. So I go along to school discos because one of the key things about being an excellent father is dancing with your thumbs out. So I like to go to the school discos. My wife says, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm like, yes, I do. I definitely do. And it's like I can hear a little Bane voice in the back of my head. When there's a school disco, you have my permission to dance. And it's like, yes, I will, thank you. And so I get out on the stage there. My daughters are like, oh, Dad, stop it. Dancing away there. And they're like, yeah, I hear you kids, you want the leg as well. And they're like, no, Dad, you're embarrassing us, just stop it. And I'm like, okay, I can make this cool, kids. I will bring in the dab. With the dad dab here, right? Dad dab, okay? You always got to have your thumbs out when you do it. That's the dad dab, okay? Copyright me, okay? This is a big thing on social media. All the cool dads are okay, well, I'm the only dad who's doing it at the moment, but this is going to be a big thing in a couple of years. It's going to be the spiciest meme on the internet. The other thing I really love about being a dad is that you get to tell dad jokes. Yeah, that's right. You know what I'm saying? Look, I just laughed because I know I'm funny. That's what dads do. Oh, I'm so funny. And dad jokes, which reminds me of a story. The other night I was in a restaurant and I ordered a pizza and I couldn't eat all the pizza. And there was about half of it left over. And so the waiter comes around at the end of the night and he says, look sir, would you like a box for your leftovers? And I looked at him and said, a box for my leftovers? No thanks, but I'll wrestle you for them. Hashtag dad jokes. I want to tell you this morning, no, that's enough of that hilarity. Okay, guys, time to get serious. I want to tell you 3 stories about 3 different callings this morning, and I want to sing you a song. The first story about the first calling takes place, well, we read about it in the Gospels, and it's about Peter, the disciple. And the story goes like this. Jesus and the disciples are around the other side of the lake, and they've had a pretty full-on kind of day, and the crowds have been pressing in on Jesus, making big demands of him. So he says to his disciples, you get in the boat and you cross the lake ahead of me. You go straight across the lake in the boat and I will walk around the outside, just take a bit of a debrief time and relax from the busyness of the day. The disciples get in the boat. It gets dark. They're out in the middle of the lake where it's deepest and it's now nighttime and a storm starts to kick up. So they're quite fearful. And then all of a sudden they see this figure walking out on the water towards them. And someone in the boat yells out, it's a ghost. You probably would think that too if you saw someone walking on water because that's not normal. It's a ghost. And Peter stands up and he calls out, he says, if it's you, Jesus, tell me to get out of the boat and come to you. And Jesus says, Peter, come. And Peter gets out of the boat and he starts walking on water. The call, the invitation, that call to follow Jesus is always risky. You've got to get out of the boat. You've got to get out of the boat. It's nice and safe in the boat. No one likes to be in the middle of the lake when it's nighttime and there's a storm and you're in the deepest part of the lake, but no one wants to be actually in the lake. We'd rather be in the boat, right? And this is why all through the Gospels you see Jesus saying things like, if you want to follow me, you've got to walk the difficult and narrow path. If you want to follow me, you first got to lay your life down. You first got to surrender your life. If you want to follow me, you've got to pick up your cross and follow me. And his first century listeners would have understood exactly what he was talking about when he said, pick up your cross. Because the only reason back then that you picked up a cross was because you were going to be taken to the outskirts of that town and you were going to be crucified on it. So what Jesus was saying is, if you want to follow me, you've got to die to yourself. You've got to surrender yourself. You've got to get out of the boat. And this can be really difficult. The call of Christ is a call to surrender ourselves to his great love for each and every one of us. But this is really difficult when you live in a culture that says, oh, no, don't surrender yourself. That's not how you find freedom. Don't surrender. Do whatever you want to do. Do what feels good. That's how you find happiness and freedom in life. It's kind of like this piano up here. Imagine this keyboard is kind of like your life. And there's two ways that you can play this keyboard. One way we'll call the way that our culture says you should do it, which is just do whatever feels good. Don't surrender yourself to those stupid, outdated laws of music. Don't let anyone tell you where you should put your fingers to play it properly. Don't let anyone say you need to practice and learn about melody and rhythm and tempo. Just do what feels good. Just jump on that thing, bashing away. Look, I'm even using my feet. I'm awesome. I love it. I feel so good. It's like my kids at our house. We've got a piano in our lounge. They can't play it. And they come in, they open up the lid, and they start bashing away. And they're like, Dad, it's the Wiggles. And I'm like, no, it's not the Wiggles, children, not at all. Even if the Wiggles are on drugs and they forgot how to play their instruments. That's not what the Wiggles would sound like. Well, okay, maybe if the Wiggles started doing death metal crossover, then that, you're getting a little bit close there, like fruit salad, yummy, It's like, kids, please. And they run off crying. They're like, Mum, Dad's being mean again. I'm not. No, that's not how it happens. Mum smacks me around the ear. Okay, so that's one way you can play the piano. I'm doing whatever I want. It feels good. The other way to play that piano, imagine this is your life, is the way Jesus calls us to, which is to surrender. And you say, you know what, I think there's a right and a wrong way to play this piano. So I'm going to surrender myself to the rules of music and melody and rhythm and tempo. And I'm going to put my fingers in the right place to play chords. And I'm going to say no to some things now, so I say a much bigger yes to something more beautiful in the future. And so my friends come round on a Friday and Saturday night and they say, Brendan, would you like to go to a party with us? And I'd say, look, my brothers, no, I can't. I've got to stay home and learn my music theory tonight. So I say no to some things to get a much bigger yes later on. And now, when I play the piano with that attitude, an attitude of surrender, I find my freedom. I find true freedom. I can play beautiful Bach or Beethoven or Mozart or R&B. I can write my own songs. I can compose my own symphonies. But I found my freedom by first surrendering. And that's like the call of Christ in our lives. That call of Christ to find that freedom, you've got to get out of the boat. And it seems a little bit counterintuitive because everyone on the boat's going, no, don't get out of the boat. What are you doing? Stay in the boat. Getting out of the boat, that's risky. Which brings me to my second story this morning, about the second calling. And this is also in the Gospels. It's about a rich young man. And if you haven't heard the story before, it goes like this. This rich young man approaches Jesus, turns up to Jesus one day, and he says, Master, what do I have to do to be saved? And Jesus looks at him and he says, love God, love the commandments, love your neighbor. And the rich young man says, I do all those things. And Jesus looks at him with love. And he says, I'll tell you what, go and sell everything that you own and give the money to the poor. And the rich young man can't do it. And he goes away sad. Now, we've heard that story before, probably a lot of us in this room, or maybe this is the first time you've heard it. The first thing we often think is, oh yeah, typical rich people. They're so greedy, they just can't let go of their money. If that's what you're thinking, you've missed the point. He turns up, first of all, he's not a doubter, he's not a skeptic. He says, Jesus, what do I have to do to be saved? He wants to know the truth. And then when Jesus says, live the commandments, love your neighbor, love God, he does all those things. He's a good man. He's not a bad guy. But when Jesus says to him, sell all your possessions, give the money to the poor and come follow me, he can't say yes. And here's the really amazing part of this gospel passage. The rich young man walks away sad. He doesn't walk away angry going, oh, what would that Jesus guy know? I know all about money. We should keep the money, and we could run the best social media campaign in all of Jerusalem. You know, it would be so amazing. He's got no idea what I know hedge funds, like no one else knows hedge funds. I mean, it would be phenomenal. He doesn't. He walks away sad. Why is he sad? Because he wants to say yes, but he can't get out of the boat. He can't get out of the boat. You see, here's the important point. Every single one of us in this life, we are going to serve something or somebody. One of my favourite Bob Dylan songs is called "You Gotta Serve Somebody." And in the song, Bob Dylan says, it might be the devil, it might be the Lord, you might be rich, you might be poor, but everybody serves somebody. So the question is, are you going to choose who and what you serve? Or are you going to be like that rich young man who is a slave to other things that you didn't choose? Who walks away sad because he knows he wants to give himself to Christ, but he can't do it. I want to play you a song now. It's called "Who Will Come to the Aid of a Man Like Me." It's by a criminally underrated New Zealand songwriter called Derek Lind, and it goes like this. Who will come to the aid of a man like me? Who will come to the aid of a man of poverty? Who will rescue this ship from the wayward sea? Who will come to the aid of a man like me? I've been underfed, I've been overdrawn, I've been walking this fine line for much too long, and I've been looking for you in all the wrong places. I've been out on a limb, I've been over my head, I've been sleeping too long in the wrong bed, and I've been looking for you in all the wrong faces. Who will come to the aid of a man like me? Who will come to the aid of a man with poverty? Who will rescue this ship from the wayward sea? Who will come to the aid of a man like me? I've been underfed, I've been overdrawn, I've been walking this fine line for much too long, and I've been looking for you in all the wrong places. I've been out on a limb, I've been over my head, I've been sleeping too long in the wrong bed, and I've been looking for you in all the wrong faces. Who will come to the aid of a man like me? Who will come to the aid of a man of poverty? Who will rescue this ship from the wayward sea? Who will come to the aid of a man like me? Who will come to our aid? Who will rescue us? Who truly loves us, each and every one of us in this room, regardless of whatever sin or brokenness we think we have in our life that makes us unlovable? Who loves us and calls us and wants to use us for his kingdom to do great things? Christ does. But there's lots of competing callings and voices in our culture, right? Saying, hey, come follow me or come do this and you'll have happiness in life. Why should we respond to Jesus and say yes to him? Why should we get out of the boat for this guy? Because first of all, Jesus says, if you want life and life to the fullest, it's found with me. So if we want life to the fullest in this life and eternity with him in the next, it's found with him. Secondly, There is no other person who will ever make a call on your life. There is no other thing, no other person who might call to you in this life who has ever loved you enough to die on a cross for you. That's why you can trust Jesus. That's the guy I trust. And the reason I trust him and I entrust my life and my family and my everything to him is because he's the only person who has ever loved me enough to sacrifice himself on a cross out of love for me. That story I started with earlier about Peter, it doesn't finish when Peter gets out on the water and starts walking. There's a little bit more. Peter starts walking towards Jesus, and then for whatever reason, he takes his eyes off Jesus and he starts to sink. Maybe he got full of pride. He got out in the lake and he thought, hey, I can do this. This is awesome. I don't need Jesus. I'm doing this myself. Well, I'm sinking. Or maybe he gets out on the lake and he starts to get scared. What the heck have I done? The boat's back there. Everyone's looking at me with their mouth open. Jesus is over. What am I doing? I can't walk on water. Takes his eyes off. Jesus starts sinking. It doesn't matter whatever the reason was, but he took his eyes off Jesus and he started to sink. But here's the important bit. Jesus never abandoned him. Jesus was right there with him and he reaches down into the water and he pulls him up. Christ will never ever abandon us. He's here today. He's here this weekend calling. And he will never abandon us in that calling. He goes with us every step of the way. The book of Revelation, or the book of the Apocalypse, whichever you prefer to call it, the final book in the Bible, chapter 3, verse 20, it says this, and this is Jesus speaking here. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. And he's talking about the door of our lives. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Whoever opens that door, I will come in and they will eat with me and I will eat with them. Jesus never abandons us. And he is here this weekend calling to you and to me. Which brings me to my third and final story about a calling. This is a story about a beggar who lived in the Middle East, and the only thing that this beggar had to his name was an old blanket, his clothes, and an old tin cup that he would beg into. And the only things that he lived off were whatever he could beg into the cup. And this one particular hot and dusty day, he's crouched down on his blanket on the outskirts of this town in the Middle East. He's managed to beg for himself a grand total of 10 grains of rice. That's all he's got in his cup that day. All of a sudden, off in the distance, he sees a dust cloud begin to kick up. He sees horses, carriages, camels, footmen, soldiers. This thing is massive. This is the biggest caravan he's ever seen in his life before. And this thing's streaming past him, and he stands up with excitement, and he thinks, this is my chance. He starts waving his cup around. Please take pity on me, a poor beggar. Give me something. Give me anything. The noise and the dust just keeps rumbling past him, and then finally, this last big majestic carriage comes to a halt right beside his blanket. And these two footmen pull on these big ropes. These big red curtains pull aside, and down drop two massive wooden steps. And then out of this carriage steps the Sultan, this king, the most rich and powerful king that this beggar has ever seen in his life before. He's got fine clothes on. He's got rings on every finger. The beggar throws his cup out and he says, please, sir, take pity on me, a poor beggar. Give me something. Give me anything. And the king looks at him. He says, what's that cup? He says, this is my begging cup, your highness. And whatever I can beg into this cup, that's all I get to live on. And the king says to him, what have you got in your cup today? He says, I've got 10 grains of rice, your highness, that's all. And then he holds the cup out again. Please, take pity on me, a poor beggar. Give me something. Give me anything. The king looks at him and he says, I'll tell you what. How many grains of rice will you let me take from your cup? And the beggar takes a step backwards and thinks, what? What? This rich and powerful man who has everything, and he wants something from me? The man who has nothing? How dare he? But then he looks around and he sees the soldiers and he gets a little bit scared and he thinks, I better give him something or this could go really bad for me. So he hands him the cup and he puts on a fake smile and he says, your highness, you can take 2 grains of rice. The king reaches in, takes his 2 grains of rice, hands the cup back to the beggar, climbs up the steps. The footmen pull the ropes. The steps go up, the curtain draws, the soldiers wave on, and off they go. And he can't believe this. He is standing there in absolute disbelief for 45 minutes as the last of that caravan disappears over the far horizon and all of the dust settles, and he's standing there alone, all by himself again. And now he is angry. How dare he? How dare he do this to me? And he throws the cup at the ground as hard as he can. And the cup hits the blanket. And out fly his 8 grains of rice that are left. And 2 of the biggest, most precious, most expensive diamonds he's ever seen in his life before. And in that instant, he thinks to himself, what a fool I've been. If only I had given him more. If only I had given him more. I told you there were 3 callings. There's actually 4. The 4th calling is the calling of Jesus this weekend on you and me, on our lives. He's here present this weekend and he is calling to us. And my challenge to you is, don't be afraid to say yes. Don't walk away from this Ignite weekend like that beggar thinking, I wish I'd got out of the boat. I wish I'd given more. Don't be afraid to say yes to the one who loves you more than anyone else in this life or the next will ever love you. Maybe you're sitting there today and you've never heard about this Christ before. This is the first time this has really sort of been a thing for you. And you know there's something in it. Yeah, there's some truth in this. I want to respond to that. At the rally tonight, there's going to be an opportunity for that. I encourage you, don't hold back. Surrender. Don't be afraid to give that cup over to the King. Maybe you're sitting there and you've already made this decision previously, but for the last few weeks or months or years, you've been caught up in sin and brokenness, and you know that you need to get back to Christ, but you're too scared. And you think, why? Why would Christ want me? Christ loves you. He never stopped loving you, and he is still there knocking at the door of your life. Don't be afraid to surrender to his love, just like the prodigal son who comes home to the father when he's got nothing else left. Maybe you're sitting there this morning and you're thinking, why would God want to use me? I'm insignificant. What can I do for the kingdom? Mother Teresa used to say that God doesn't call those who are already prepared. He prepares those who he's calling, and he's calling every single one of us in this room. So don't allow your fear about what you don't have to hold you back. Maybe you're a young man here today and Christ is calling you to the vocation of the priesthood. Don't be afraid to say yes. Maybe you're a young woman here today and Christ is calling you to the vocation of consecrated religious life. Don't be afraid to say yes. Whatever the calling is, don't be afraid to get out of that boat. Don't be like the beggar who says, I wish I'd given more. Because if you hand over that humble little cup of yours and those humble little grains of rice, Christ will take those humble little things and he will transform them. And he will turn them into some of the most precious and important riches for his kingdom in this world, in our culture, and for all of eternity. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Whatever it is that you think is holding you back, the brokenness, the sin, the fear of the things that you haven't told anybody else, Christ loves you and he's waiting for you this weekend.
Let's all stand, guys, and very prayerfully we'll come to the front. Incredible words of encouragement this morning to respond, to not be afraid. As we sing this next song, let's make that our prayer this morning.
For the sake of his wounds, mercy bled beyond the tomb. Jesus Christ, eternal Son, God in man, blood, the fount of life, the Father's love given for man, beloved Son, we trust in thee. Oh, sacred heart of our living God, Lord, I place my trust in your wondrous love, for in all your ways, Lord, I give you praise. This great sacrifice, God, you gave your life.
By your stripes we are healed, risen God upon the road, broken bread we recognize, living Son, our hearts they burn. Oh, sacred heart of our living God, Lord, I place my trust in your wondrous love, for in all your ways, Lord, I give you praise. This great sacrifice, God, you gave your life. Oh, sacred heart of our living God, Lord, I place my trust in your wondrous love, for in all your ways, Lord, I give you praise. This great sacrifice, God, you gave your life. You are divine. You are divine. You are divine. A fire within my life. You are divine. You are divine. You are divine. A fire within my life. You are divine. You are divine. You are divine. A fire within my life. You are divine. You are divine.
within my life. I find within my life. I find within my life. I find within my life. Thank you, Jesus. Come to me.
So why are you guys all here at Ignite?
God, and I love the way he let me keep a straight face, man. This is serious. I love the way he blesses me. I love the way he gives me, he surprises me with his gifts and his love. He's the only person that I truly think that love me. Well, except for my mom and dad, but still, he's in my heart. He'll always be in my heart.
And why are you guys here at Ignite?
Yes, for God. And I love him.
That's good. And how many Ignite conferences have you guys been to? This is our first. Your first one. Are you liking it so far?
Already.
It's definitely the best one.
Gosh, I love
And
the
I'm
music.
here to learn more about God and realize the reason why He blessed me and put me on this earth. I'm just so happy. I'm really happy.
That's awesome. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Yeah. Catch you. So, guys, Ignite Conference, where are you guys from?
I'm from Port Macquarie, and my name's Patrick.
I'm from Tweed and my name's Charlotte.
So, how many Ignite Conferences have you guys been to? Is it your first or you've been?
This is my first one, and I absolutely love it. Thank you so much.
This is my third one and it's better than ever.
Oh, that's awesome. And how has Ignite impacted your life? Like, you keep coming back, so it's got to have impacted your life. And, like, you've only known a little bit,
It's
but...
just become so much more eye-opening for me, and that there's more meaning towards my life.
And what about you?
I don't know, it's really great to experience it with so many people and to see how many people love like this whole evangelization thing. So.
Cool. And, your keynote that you went to earlier today, do you remember what that was about?
It's about being able to set boundaries for yourself, and it was really useful. Thank you.
Who did your keynote?
It was Odin, and it was all year 11 students that are here at Ignite.
So how do you think that keynote has impacted your life?
It's helped me really look at where I'm going in the upcoming years towards my future schooling. Yeah.
And what about you? What did you like about that keynote?
It was really fun. They had a lot of games and stuff, so
That's good.
Mine didn't have as many games.
But it was still good. You got stuff out of it.
It was still really, really good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a good time at the conference.
Shalom World Television is coming to Australia. This is a great gift. It's been gifted to many parts of the world, and now it's our Australian turn to receive it with open arms. I welcome it, I bless it. It's going to really support family life, married life, youth, give us a resource that we know that we need really great help in these areas. May Almighty God bless this new resource coming to our land in the name of the Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Shalom World, God's own channel.